Hey guys, welcome back to another Quick Bits video. Here are all of the videos that I'm going to be detailing in this video. So spoiler alert for these films. Yeah, Warner Brothers Wonka. Definitely has some tough shoes to fill, but I think it measured up to the previous installments. More on that later. Let's talk about what didn't work. Timothy Chalamet. Yeah. I know. But just like listen to my reasoning before you click off. Timothy Chalamet, while an amazing actor, and he did great in this movie, I just want that to be known. Nobody will ever be as good as Gene Wilder, and like I said, Timothy Chalamet did really well in this movie. And I think if it was a standalone movie without any like prequels or remakes, I think that he wouldn't have any competition. But this whole movie, I was looking for Willy Wonka energy, and in my opinion, I think I think he just played like a really hyped up, upbeat candy maker. I mean that is Willy Wonka, but I don't know. I was missing something. I don't know exactly what it was, but I don't know. I know this is super critical, but I was just like I said, I was expecting like that final piece to kick in at some point. I also rather it not be a musical. I'm just not a big fan of musicals in general. Although technically it's not a musical. There were some songs that were really cool. There were some other songs that just didn't fit. But with all the negatives out of the way, let's talk about what really worked. I think this movie had some great themes. First off, the greedy beating the needy. I mean, that theme fits everywhere in the real world today. Also, the theme of follow your dreams no matter what, especially in a kids movie, fits pretty well, don't you think? I do think this was a really fun kids movie that a lot of people would like. I think the plot was easy to follow. I think there were enough jokes to not make it boring. The Chocolate Cartel, the Chocoholics, and the Chocolate Monks were my favorite. Just so out of pocket that they were like stupidly funny. The montage of Willy Wonka and the gang sneaking out and selling chocolate was very, very well done, and I found myself at the edge of my seat. I did say earlier that I wasn't a fan of the music, but the songs that worked really, really well. The Oompa Loompa song, amazing. Pure Imagination towards the end, amazing. Speaking of the end sequence, I really like how they set up the 1971 movie. I also think that if they think really hard enough, there can be some like wiggle room in between this movie and the 1971's movie. I don't know. I feel like it could be possible if they want more money. Walking into the movie theaters, I really didn't realize how many people were in this movie. Like I said earlier, while Timothy Chalamet didn't really give the Wonka energy exactly, he still gave a great performance as a character that we all can root for. Hugh Grant was hilarious as the Oompa Loompa, and may have been the best part of the movie, if not for a scene that I'm going to talk about later. Olivia Colman was someone who I was not expecting to be in this movie, and she absolutely nailed the role of Mrs. Scrubbit. Keegan-Michael Key, let's just say, the increasingly fat chief wouldn't work with any other actor. He just plays it off so perfectly. Kala Lane, I don't even know if I'm saying, I think that's right, as Noodle, was a huge surprise. This movie was a breakout movie for her. Definitely the star of the show. And as for the best thing about this movie, it's the scene where Willie and Noodle escape and go on singing a duet on the roof of the hotel. Everything about the scene makes me so happy. The drawings, the actress, the camera angles, the music, the singing, perfection. As for the grades, Braxton gave it a 7 out of 10, and I'm going to give it an 85. All right, next up, DCEU's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It was actually a pretty decent movie that I really was not expecting that much. Let's first talk about what didn't work. It was actually funny because in the first half of the movie, I was like, oh, I'm so happy they didn't go with a villain that has the same powers. I'm so happy they didn't go that route. I really liked how Black Manta was really a different version of himself compared to the first movie. But as we got towards the end, especially with the end fight, everything was scrapped and they had the same powers. And yeah. Speaking about Manta, even though he was a lot different compared to the first movie, I would have loved to seen someone else be the villain. But I feel like that's a gripe for the first movie. In my opinion, they should have saved Manta for this movie. I also feel like this was a movie that got really affected by COVID. Braxton was like, yeah, the green screen was pretty obvious in some places. I tend to agree. I also feel like the special effects were kind of plain Jane, and not anything new in the genre. Between COVID, Amber Heard reshoots, and the DCEU ending, this movie was doomed from the start. Now that we got the bad things out of the way, let's talk about the good things. This movie drew a lot of similarities to the Black Panther movies, an advanced civilization which has advanced technology, that tries to hide from the world but eventually announces their existence. While the first movie was all about Arthur trying to tap into his Atlantean blood, this movie shows us his struggle with finding his place as a king. I really like how this movie walked the line of Arthur thinking that he's not a king but rather a hero. One of the main themes was a true king builds bridges, and in the end, Arthur builds a bridge between both of his worlds, the human world and Atlantis. I also loved the world building, really an unappreciated part of this movie. Jason Momoa was really the heart of the soul of this movie. He brought the comedy, the action, the drama, just really versatile actor. I also need to shout out Randall Park. I'm so glad that they gave him a bigger role in this movie because he really delivers. Amber Heard. Okay, let's not talk about Amber Heard. Let's just move on to the best thing about this movie, which was... this movie really worked best when it was framed as like a buddy cop comedy with Arthur and Orm. Just funny moments like Orm learning how to run, the deep sea gambling bar, that reminded me so much of Jabba the Hutt, Jabba's palace, the cantina in Star Wars. They even had like the Jabba the Hutt stand-in in this deep dive gambling bar. As for the grades, Braxton gave it a 6 out of 10, and I gave it a 7 out of 10. And on the quick bits scale is going to be bumped up to a 73 out of 100, or 73. In the action scale. All right, next up, Migration. Illumination's Migration was a kids movie of all kids movies. Before we start, wanted to talk about Mooned, the new Despicable Me short starring Vector. It was very cute. Animation style was great. Really makes me excited for the next Despicable Me movie in the near future. All right, now back to Migration. If I were to give you a one-sentence summary of this movie, it would be Rio, but instead of Brazil, it's New York. Let's talk about what didn't work. My only main gripe about this movie is that it's a story that we've seen so many times, especially in animation. The overprotecting dad that eventually gives in, and it's all now about a fish out of water story. Or is it duck out of water now? But there were a lot of good things about this movie, so let's talk about them. Stuff like the animation style, how every duck is drawn and animated differently. The visuals were stunning, especially the end sequence in Jamaica with all the birds popping out of the trees. Great. Whoever thought of the cloud snowball fight in the sky, is a genius, because that was one of the best scenes in the movie. I also love the scene where the birds just start loading their mouths with tomatoes and go like a Gatling gun at the bad guy. It was very funny. The scene where Gwen had the poop in the sky, but then it cut to her pooping on the ground. Perfection, just so true. Happens all the time. Well, maybe not pooping in the sky, but you understand what I'm saying. The Pigeon Mafia, led by Aquafina, was hilarious. Pretty much gave an insight into what goes on in New York. Finally, I love how the humans didn't talk in this movie, because from the ducks' perspective, they don't understand what the humans are saying. Now for the best thing about this movie, it's the voice acting and how each one of these characters grew. Kumail Nanjiani was great as the overbearing father. He started off that way, but he realized how his kids were having a great time, and then he slowly transitioned into doing which was best for them, which was letting them experience the world. Elizabeth Banks was hilariously good at just being the cool mom. I loved how this whole movie set up how Dax wanted to be a grown-up, but just falling short all the time. And at the end, he became the leader of the ducks, of the flock. Apart from maybe Uncle Dan, who we'll touch on in a moment, Gwen was the objectively funniest one. She made the most out of her opportunities. Keegan Michael Key is slowly approaching my national treasure category, which is basically anytime they pop up on screen, I'm like, oh, blank, the national treasure, such a national treasure. And right now the occupants are Nick Cage, Owen Wilson, Jack Black, and guess who? Danny DeVito. Anyway, Keegan-Michael Key was so funny in this movie, and you kind of forget he was there until he just pops back up and just makes something so funny, just like a random comment, just really fun. And last but not least, Danny DeVito is Uncle Dan. If not for the strong performance of everyone in this movie, Danny DeVito would be the best thing about this movie. Just made this movie so much more enjoyable. As for the grades, Peter gave it a 9.5 out of 10, which is a little too rich for my blood. Tyler gave it a 5.6 out of 10, which is a little closer to my score, and I gave it a 6 out of 10. But as an animated film, we're going to have to give it a quick bits boost and make it a 79 in the animations tab. Alright, final movie here for December. It's going to be Michael Mann's Ferrari. Let's talk about what didn't work. There was a lot of blood and gore that, while it was cool, I don't know if it really worked in this movie. Also, at some points, it was very confusing. For example, like during the race, I didn't know which drivers were who. But I think by the end, I kind of figured it out. But those are like my only two gripes, I think. Let's talk about what did work, actually. So I love the old-timey footage of Ferrari and their races to kick off this movie. I also like the abrupt title change, because that says to me, like, hey, pay attention. The setting was beautiful. It definitely captures 1957 Italy. I mean, like, not that I've been to Italy in 1957, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's supposed to look like. I'm not going to go, like, research it or anything, but the camera work was amazing. Let's start off with the walking shots of Enzo Ferrari. Sometimes we do need a breather in between the fast-paced races and action sequences, just to take a step back and look at the man behind the figurative wheel of Ferrari. Another shot that I went goo goo gaga all over was when Mann had close-ups of Enzo while the Ferrari car was in the background, because this movie is not about the car. It's about the struggles of Enzo Ferrari with the car, with the company in the background. The race scenes were so great. Great intensity, great suspense, great sound mix, just great. I did want to talk about Deporta. I don't even know. Is that his name? Just like the guy that got because he ran over a tire in the middle of the road. Based on the extensive amounts of research that I did in preparation of this movie, I had no idea what the outcome of the race was going to be. Of Deporta was going to be. When they introduced us to him, I was like, oh yeah, he'll probably win. That's like how these movies go. The guy that they introduce is going to win the race. Oh, but boy, was I wrong. when he crashed into that like telephone pole, Peter and I all just like looked around and like was like, what the hell just happened? Finally, we get to the best part about this movie, which was Adam Driver. Was there any ever doubt? I believe that Adam Driver is one of the most talented actors of my generation. Just the fact that he can like do stuff like Star Wars, be in the running for Mr. Fantastic, and then put out stuff like Marriage Story and Ferrari. Okay, I'll stop drooling all over him now, but my point still stands. You can really feel like Enzo is a real person just based on the way that Adam Driver plays him. The first time you see him, he still has that itch, just a little itch, just to jump back in the seat and drive. You can also see that Enzo's kind of a player, you know? You hear him say stuff like, I'm not going to do the accent, but he says, I must have total control, which really, like, everyone wants total control. Adam Driver does play Enzo a kind of aloof, but I think it works. I think it takes a special kind of actor to talk to a wall and give the audience as much emotion as possible. And as for the grade, I'm going to give it an 81 on the drama, horror, thriller scale. You're told I'll be a harder temptation.